The luxury industry is in such deep shit right now. Like, even before the tariff thing started, the last 12 months by the industry have been dubbed the Great Luxury Slowdown. And then the tariffs did hit, everybody started to panic, and those goofy TikToks went viral. All of it's made in China, bro. During the last 15 years, the luxury fashion industry has gone mainstream. The increased amount of money, the presence of the internet, and just a larger number of eyeballs has changed the industry in a massive way. Runways are a lot more theatrical than they used to be. Designers are expected to be world builders, much more so than in the past. And the number of ways that we can engage with a fashion brand has increased. Miu Miu will sell you books occasionally. Christian Dior wants to sell you overpriced cappuccinos. Maison Margiela did a crypto thing at one point, and Balenciaga made a very strange video game. During luxury's rise to the mainstream, there have been two primary camps of commentary. One is asking what even is luxury? Like, if we get really specific, what does or does not qualify as luxury? The other camp doesn't really care what the definition of luxury is. It just knows that at some point very soon, the luxury industry is going to collapse completely. Let's focus on the collapse first. Critics vary in how they think the luxury industry is going to collapse, but all things equal, the predicted collapse is pretty easy to explain. The logic goes like this. Luxury companies are like pretty much every other company in that they are driven by profit and growth. Most of the household names of luxury are publicly traded even, so that push for profit and growth is even stronger than it would be at like a little mom and pop shop company, right? Okay, so luxury companies, whether they're in fashion or booze or cruises or popsicles, all luxury companies essentially offer the same thing. Specialness. That sounds horrible on camera. But I mean, you understand what I mean, right? Specialness. That's what they give you. You said that you need a wallet? All right, this way, monsieur. We have such a special wallet for you. Do you need a jacket? Wait until you see this jacket. Do you need decorative bars of soap for your guest bathroom? Well, we have decorative bars of soap that are gonna kick your dick off. Okay, so the luxury fashion industry creates special things, right? Okay, so the people that are predicting that luxury is going to have this massive collapse and downfall would say that specialness and profit and growth, that these things can't coexist for forever. They predict that at some point, maybe even here in the present, the once special offerings of luxury brands will be quietly replaced with injection molded plastic shit. If that was true, then like once the secret gets out, everybody's been tricked. Luxury is a myth. There can be no luxury industry after that. If you're new here, hi, my name is Bliss. That's my wife, Daniela, behind the camera. We are independent fashion critics. Every season, we fly out to Paris for Fashion Week and cover it in just unbelievable detail. We have dedicated our careers to documenting, studying, and analyzing the work of contemporary fashion designers. We conduct interviews with them. We attend more runway shows than any other critics or journalists in the industry, and we spend every waking minute thinking about clothes. If you haven't seen work by us before, I strongly encourage you to subscribe, and I especially encourage you to subscribe if you're not really like a fashion person. I feel like the industry has done a terrible job of marketing itself to people who are not already obsessed with it, and while there is definitely some hilariously bad fashion design out there, there's also some really beautiful and kick-ass stuff that is absolutely worth seeing. I did feel like we needed to like offer some context as to our qualifications about this before we actually talk about it. And now I'm sure everybody is just like, wow, he's a fashion critic? That's crazy. Oh my gosh, so cool. Okay, so in order to understand where the luxury industry might be going, we need to go back before the mainstreamification of the luxury industry. Gear shift time. You know how like a lot of people are really mad at Elon Musk right now? Well, none of you are as mad at Elon Musk as this guy who used to be the richest man in the world and is now the 5th richest man in the world. Womp womp. His name is Bernard Arnault, and he has changed the fashion industry more than any designer could even think about changing it. Bernard owns a multinational conglomerate called LVMH. A multinational conglomerate is basically just a company that owns a lot of other companies. LVMH stands for Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy, but really they're being modest because LVMH owns stake in a metric shit ton of companies. I am going to way oversimplify things here, but when Bernard Arnault was acquiring majority stake in most of these companies, they were in a really bad place financially. The luxury business was very different at that time. Selling ultra nice products to ultra wealthy people was a great business model around the year like 1900, but as you get up into the 1980s and the 1990s, it's not working so well. So Bernard Arnault introduced a new strategy, and there are two parts of this strategy that are relevant for this video. The first part is that they were going to focus on products that were very expensive, but that most people could technically afford. Like an example here in the present would be that most American adults could technically, through cash or credit, afford an $800 t-shirt or a $90 tube of lipstick. Train. Pause for train. Ladies and gentlemen, the train. Now, it's probably not responsible for most people to do that, but it's not like a Ferrari or like a beach house in the Maldives where it's like, I don't even know how I would come up with that quantity of money. Like most folks, even if it's irresponsible, can push together a couple $100s for some Gucci slides, right? How do three grown men not have $800 between them? When people use the term the great luxury slowdown, they are referring to fewer people participating in this business model. There are fewer people spending a few $100s on small luxury items. The second part of Bernard Arnault's strategy is the hype machine. I really like this part. Bernard saw that the runway presentations at famous Parisian fashion houses like Christian Dior and Givenchy, that they were losing a ton of money. And as a good businessman, of course, he would want to cut out the part of the business that makes no money but costs a lot of money, right? No. Importantly, Bernard did not care that the runway shows lost money. He considered that to be part of their advertising budget. In fact, he wanted those runway shows to get bigger, louder. He wanted to spend more money on them. He even hired young, controversial fashion designers to do the work at these historic houses. You may have heard of some of them, Alexander McQueen and John Galliano. To create hype and newness at these fashion houses, Arnault made these brands places where the audience would come to see radical artistic statements. Runway shows were not for shopping any more than walking through a museum is shopping. Arnault positioned runway shows as a place where the audience could dream and feel. The audience who watches a recording of a runway show or goes to attend one in person should walk away having had a moving, emotional experience similar to a great movie or a great stage play. Shout out Dana Thomas, one of the greatest fashion writers of all time. If you want to hear more about that story generally, you should read Deluxe, How Luxury Lost Its Luster. It's a fantastic book. And Dana is such a nice lady. I've talked to her a few times. She's really cool. But do not read that book yet because I really want to emphasize something. What is the actual definition of luxury? I want you to hold it in your head. If you have a preconceived definition of what luxury is, write it down, hold it in your head very purposefully because it's going to become important later. Second question, do you personally own a luxury item? Like, do you own something that someone else, a stranger, would look at and say objectively like, oh my goodness, how luxurious. Wow, that's very nice. If you don't own something that is like objectively luxurious, do you instead maybe own something that is luxurious, but that luxury is only known to you and maybe a few others? Like this would be something like your father's battery-powered watch that only is worth maybe $45, but is important to you because it belonged to your father. Or maybe a quilt that your grandmother made. Or maybe just a photograph of a loved one that is no longer with you. I own something like that. This is a small chicken figurine that is made out of carved stone. The texture of the stone is incredible, and the weight of the whole object is really pleasing in the hand. My dad got this for me when he was traveling for a job that he had around the time that I was born. My father quit that job because it required him to travel internationally so much, and he wanted to devote more time to being present as a dad. My father loves traveling, and he really loved doing the work that he was doing. Like, for my dad to give up that job was a huge sacrifice. But my brothers and I have benefited enormously from having our dad home with us every night when we were growing up. Is that luxurious? Because monetarily, it's worthless. Like, if I gave it to someone else, even if I explained that story to them, it mostly, I think, would still be worthless. The definition of luxury is inherently very slippery. It means different things to different people. But maybe that slipperiness is just there because of sentimental value. Like, obviously, my relationship with my dad is something that cannot be commodified and sold to other people. So if we remove sentimental value from the equation, is the definition of luxury suddenly very clear? For those of you who do own an item that a stranger would objectively think is luxurious, I still want you to hold that item in your head, and I want everyone to still remember what your definition of luxury is. Keep that in your head. Write it down if you can. I'm really hoping this is going to fuck you up. Hang with me. Rick Owens and Chanel. Are both of these companies luxury? Like, obviously, the audiences of these companies couldn't be any more different. But are they both luxury companies? I would like to propose a radical new definition of luxury. The global household names of luxury would like us to believe that the definition of luxury is not slippery. They would like us to believe that luxury is just a vertical sliding scale of niceness that correlates to cost. The more you spend on something, the nicer the thing is, and the more luxurious it is. That's it. At the bottom of the scale is Primark, Walmart, Shein, H&M, and at the top is all the brand names that your grandma can list off. Gucci, Louis, Prada, etc. Those huge household names benefit greatly from you holding the belief that luxury brands can be ranked according to how nice they are. And that ranking is all you would need to know as a luxury customer, because if luxury is just a sliding scale of niceness, then the brands with the biggest stores in the Dubai Mall can always win. Luxury must be a contest, and the biggest brands must be the luxury all-stars. Okay, well, fuck that. This is my definition of luxury. All luxury companies are just businesses that have a lot of extra time and have a lot of extra money. The identity of that luxury brand is determined by how they choose to spend the time and the money. By contrast, a normal non-luxury company does not have an enormous amount of extra time and money, like Bic, the lighter company that also makes like razors and pins and stuff. So that company, pretty much all their time and money is put into making sure that their products can be as low cost as possible so that they can just be utilitarian for their customers. If there is any extra money, it just goes to the CEO or the board of directors or whatever. But a luxury company charges a huge premium so that they can have a great deal of extra time and money. How are those resources spent? I want to give a wide variety of examples of how luxury companies can spend their time and money so that you, as a customer, can start to make up your mind as to what you do expect from a luxury company. We will start with the Row. The legendary American fashion brand by the Olsen twins hosts 2 runway shows per year that are done just during the standard Women's Paris Fashion Week. They only invite a few dozen people to the presentation, and there is no video allowed at all, including cell phones. Now, a lot of people watching this probably are already aware of this, and a lot of commentary online seems to be sort of rolling its eyes at this as if it's some kind of gimmick. And Daniela and I have never thought of this as a gimmick. It is one of the strongest statements that a luxury fashion brand can make. Because committing to a runway show is unbelievably expensive and time-consuming. Most consultants and business people in the industry say that a runway show must be digital first in order for it to be anywhere close to worth it. And that means that they are practically begging all attendees to have their phones out the entire, please go live if you can. Instagram, Facebook, bring multiple phones if you can. Go live everywhere if you're able to. Thank you so much. And that's fine. I mean, we run a media company. Danielle and I love documenting runway shows. But when you go to as many as we do, you do kind of start to yearn for just one, where everyone sits quietly together in the room and they are present with the music and the clothes. This is not a gimmick. Now, how would that fit into the sliding scale of niceness? I mean, if you go into a household name luxury store, they got the runway show in the flat screen TV that is bigger than any flat screen TV that you've ever seen, that is beautifully like embedded into the marble wall. And that shit plays on loop all day long. Okay, switching examples. If you watch this channel a lot, I'm sure you already know about the Margiela replica line. Most people at least have heard of the GATs. Those stand for German Army Trainers. Those are part of a larger signature line that is referred to as Replica. That project involved members of the design team finding vintage clothes and then taking them to their manufacturers and saying, I want you to make this vintage piece new as close to the original as you can. Now, of course, all designers are inspired by vintage garments, but the Maison wanted to pay tribute to those beautiful gems of unknown origin such that they would recreate them exactly the way they were, but brand new. The manufacturing challenges with that are massive. You don't know exactly what the material composition is because it was a vintage item in the 90s, and so there is no care label on it. How was the fabric dyed? What type of dye was it? Was it just a standard dye that was off the shelf at a dye shop, or did they have to mix up a special dye just for that garment? Trying to triangulate those answers takes an enormous amount of time and money just because of trial and error. The Replica line was a massive part of what set Maison Martin Margiela apart from its luxury competitors. Oh my gosh, speaking of luxury, these pants, oh my gosh. I am sweating so much. They're so cool. I love them so much. They're made of like rubberized, crazy. I haven't actually done all the textile research on it yet, but they're insane. I love them. But oh my gosh, if I sit in them, I sweat like an animal. Were you getting a little flustered thinking about me sweating like an animal? Are you disgusted by me? Do you know what horsehair feels like? Most people have never felt horsehair used in a textile context. You can't really speed up its growth, and there's only so many horses whose tails can be given a haircut. So if you go into the dressing room at some Acura stores, the entirety of the wall of the dressing room is just solid horsehair, and it feels insane. I happen to have a wallet from Acura that has a swatch of solid horsehair on it, and it also feels insane. So that wallet is super cool. I love it. But importantly, the dressing room walls are something that anyone could experience. If you want a crazy tactile experience, you can go into an Acura store and go into the dressing room and just feel the walls. And while you're there, you can also check out some of the most considered clothes in the world. Danielle and I were recently among the first people to visit the actual Céline Metier in Florence. For many Americans, this would just be called a factory, but if you close your eyes and imagine in your mind palace a factory, it is the opposite of what this place actually was. This massive room featured almost entirely glass walls that overlook the Italian countryside. Okay, so that is a perk that belongs only to the employees who work there. Again, Danielle and I were part of the first group of outsiders to ever visit that Metier. But when you buy a luxury product, you do assume that this is what you would find in the manufacturing. At least that's what one would hope. Orly is a small Japanese fashion brand that's relatively new to the Paris Fashion Week calendar. Their luxury identity is shaped by the fact that they develop all of their own fabrics. In a recent interview with the designer, I was told that they recently developed a cashmere moleskin. I didn't even realize that was possible. Developing custom fabrics is not necessarily a better choice in all situations, but it is if you want that level of freedom in your design decision-making. Way on the other side of Japanese sensibilities is a brand called Dublé. They're a brand that invests an enormous amount of time creating these bizarre crossword puzzle style wordplay jokes in their runway shows. Every review that we have done of a Dublé show, which is like 4 or 5 now, every review has just been me trying to explain each of these jokes as quickly as possible so we get all of them in. Courrèges is a French brand that's currently creatively directed by Nicolas De Felice. His shows are outstanding works of art on their own, and something that Danielle and I have emphasized a million times is how excellently cut his clothes are. Nicola told us recently that he doesn't allow anyone to copy patterns from the archives. All patterns, even when they're based on previous patterns, must be recut by the internal team. He says he wants a modern sensibility to always be a part of the clothes. That extra cutting, you'd be surprised. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money. Anon Rei is a brand based out of LA that reflects a great deal on life, death, and living purposefully. Their very first runway presentation was a performance art piece that involved no models and only had the designer, Drew, along with another guy hanging the garments up one by one in a room that simulated Mother Teresa's House of the Dying. Another performance piece saw Drew sitting silently for hours and hours with no breaks while everyone who came to the showroom tried on the collection on camera. Later on, Drew wanted to do a sneaker collaboration that involved taking a mass market sneaker model and wrapping it in what's called khadi gauze from India. He then encouraged the buyer to set the shoes on fire so that the gauze could choose the path and intensity of the fire. Then when it burns out, you have a mass-produced sneaker that is as unique as your own fingerprint. After that idea got rejected by every single shoe brand on earth for legal reasons, obviously, he finally got ASICS to agree to do a very, very small run of those sneakers, and I actually own 2 of them. I haven't asked Drew purposefully about this, but I feel very confident he made no money from that collaboration whatsoever. I think that just fire and loss and sacrifice, these are just things that Drew thinks about a lot, and he wanted to represent that in work that got to go out into the world and live its own life. We have multiple awesome interviews with Drew up on our Patreon, and we even have a little documentary that talks about the performance art piece where he sat very silently in a room for a long time. If you want, you can go check those out. A luxury identity is defined by how you choose to spend your extra time and money. Chanel owns what is called the Metier Dart, which just means that they own a number of artisanal French companies that make very specific things. They own a French shoemaker. They own a French glove maker. They own a French house that just does beautiful traditional pleating. A few others, and of course, the most famous member of the Metier Dart is Maison Lesage, who makes some of the most beautiful tweed in the whole world. Personally, I have been in the Caus store, which is the métier that makes all of their gloves, and I can assure you it is not making any money. This is a passion project to keep craft alive in France. I'm extremely grateful that the Metier Dart exists. Shifting gears, awesome story here. I recently spoke to a woman who worked for Brunello Cucinelli as a retail employee in the United States for a number of years. She talked to me for a solid hour about how fantastic it was to work for that company. The thing that I remember most from that conversation is her describing Mr. Cucinelli's Christmas gifts to all employees all around the world. He will hand select hardcover books and send it to them, just books that he thinks should be in their library. And she told me that every year she would take those books and spend the first couple of months of the new year reading them to her daughters. Now, again, much like the Celine story, that is something that is only beknownst to the employees. But I guarantee you that if you went and talked to someone who buys a lot of Cucinelli, if you asked them, why do you love this brand so much, they would at some point bring up an employee story. I guarantee it. This one applies to any and all brands, whether they're massive or very small, but having an archive of your own work is so much rarer than you would think it would be. Like most brands that you are a fan of do not have any kind of physical archive of their own work. The reason for that is because it is insanely expensive and it is so time consuming. Like I was told one time by a global conglomerated brand that you have definitely heard of that I was not allowed to go see their archive because it was just a bunch of cardboard boxes closed in a rented basement. All that said, the best in-house physical archive that I have ever seen in person is at the Jeffrey B. Small headquarters in Cavarzere, Italy, and I can't show you footage of that right now because we have a very large-scale project involving that company coming soon. Okay, you want to see what my Enfant Riche Deprimé runway invitations look like? This one was the invite to the Car Garage show, one of their best collections ever. This is a real wax seal, and this is a distressed reprinting of Christiane F., the book, in Hebrew. The OG copies of the Hebrew printing go for hundreds on eBay, so ERD did their own illegal reprint. They did a great deal of hand distressing on each copy, added a couple of small details for the heads, and then they distributed them for free in the form of runway invitations. We got that, like the thing that could just be a piece of paper that says, my name, you're invited to spring, summer, whatever, at this location, at this time, on this date, thank you. Like that's what it could be, and instead they made this. The following runway show, the one with the cages, we got a very nice printing of Henry's collage work. Physical collage is apparently a daily part of Henry's artistic practice. And of course, the newest invitation, a child's composition book that has been heavily hand-distressed and features more collage work that's meant to kind of illuminate the runway collection that featured the cardboard tanks. A lot of this stuff can't really be sold, I imagine, for copyright reasons, but this is kind of what Henry does. He has to collage, and having an outlet for that work is awesome. And speaking of runway invitations, do you want to see some other fucking crazy runway invitations? Let me just open up my filing cabinet where I keep all of the extra little things from every brand that we interact with. AZ Factory, RIP, did a residency with fashion designer Lutz Hull, where they curated old 45s and stamped the runway invitation details onto them. Raoul Mishra has these invitations that feature different insects. I went around after the show to pick up a few extras off the floor so that I could have a full set. These are especially beautiful. I love them. Issey Miyake always does the craziest invitations possible. Special paper, experimental textile samples, crazy graphic design. We could do a whole segment just about these. Another incredible runway handout was the White Mountaineering book. During COVID, the designer at White Mountaineering named Yosuke Aizawa built himself an isolated vacation home and learned a lot about adventuring and mountain climbing from his friend Naoki, who has climbed Everest before. When Naoki is going on adventures, he takes photos of the trip. And White Mountaineering, for one of their runway shows, published decades-old photos from a trip to ascend Manaslu Mountain. Love that he found such a succinct, beautiful way to pay tribute to that source of inspiration. Loewe does a great deal of promotion of handcrafted things. They have their annual craft prize, and the crafters that are close to Loewe build a lot of the very beautiful objects that can then go into Loewe's retail stores. But I think Jonathan Anderson just has this appreciation for these just big, uselessly beautiful things. I mean, he himself has to be so focused on product that I've always just assumed that this was kind of an escape for him. Additionally, Loewe's little animal bag charms are handcrafted. Daniela has one that is a little koala bear, and we've seen other versions of the koala bear, and they all look so different because it's felted wool, and felting has to be done by hand, and so all the koalas end up just being very different. They all have little different personalities. The other handmade animal charms are just stunningly beautiful. This is one of the coolest small offerings that a luxury brand has ever offered. I'm obsessed with these. I mean, look at him. He's just a patient gentleman. Kde Garson is a company that spends an enormous amount of resources to support a design process that is so complicated that I can't really properly summarize it here. We made a 45-minute video a while back that delved very deeply into the design process that Kde Garson does. You should check that out at a later time. Rei essentially spent all of her time and money creating a human version of ChatGPT for her design process. And I mean, this can get as specific as you want it to. The guy from Rude recently got in a lot of trouble because he was taking a bunch of private jets and showing off that he owned a bunch of $100,000 watches. And that is the luxury identity of Rude. If you want to go support this American bizarro dream of a guy that has made so much money that he can be like, fuck you to everybody, that is a luxury identity. And if you like that, you should go support it. But for the rest of us, I would encourage you to figure out what exactly the luxury identity of your faves actually is. That's something that exists outside of their just visual aesthetic. And there is no easy way of finding that information about your favorite luxury company, by the way. And personally, I think that that's rather cool. It is a healthy reminder that this is not just supposed to be a flippant part of our lives. If you have made it this far into the video, I want to ask you something really specific. Do you get meaningful value out of what Daniela and I do here? Like, if you use this to energize you during a sewing project, if you watch some of these videos twice because you got a lot out of them and you want to see if there was anything that you missed, or if we've just brought up something that has stayed with you for a long time. I have to remind you that this isn't permanent. We would like it to be. I mean, Danielle and I really are prepared to bring the highest quality fashion content to you all that we are able to bring you for the rest of our lives. But there is no guarantee that we can do that. if we do not have literal financial support. We occasionally make little fun videos. I believe the video that came out before this one was just kind of a silly like price guessing game type of thing. But the majority of the content that we push out is meant for 100 years from now. And that means that in 2125, fashion history students will be wondering, I can see the runway shows from back then, but I don't really understand how those connected to culture. We are making content for those people. Sometimes that goal does not get enough clicks to sustain us as a business. I mean, you would be surprised how little YouTube pays. If you get value from this channel, all I ask is that you reflect that value onto the Patreon. Plus, you get a lot of extra stuff, so it's not like you'd be doing us a favor. We really appreciate you giving us your time today. We don't take that for granted. Talk to you soon.